This video will hopefully help you learn more about no pronouns in Korean. Learning a new language involves a lot of challenges, as I'm sure most of you are aware. Memorizing all the new words and grammar. For me personally, it was eye-opening just to see how different sentences can be set up. For example, when I was learning Korean, I found out that the verb goes at the end of the sentence, which coming from English was pretty crazy. I also found that when I was learning Korean, you don't always have to announce exactly who you're talking to. So, for example, if you want to say it's raining, you can just say raining. You don't have to say it's raining, and everyone would know that you mean it's raining. Similar to how if someone is eating a lot of food, you can just look at them and say, hungry? And then you're not saying, are you hungry, or you hungry? You're just saying, hungry? And of course, everyone would know that you're talking to the person who's eating a lot. So that's what I'll be explaining in this video. So this video will be based only on Korean, which is located just below China. And because North and South Korea speak different varieties, I'm only going to be talking about the South Korean variety just to make sure all that information stays accurate. So a little brief information on no pronouns. They're just like little markers that are used to hold the place of a pronoun. So pronoun is like he, she, we, us. And as I hinted to earlier, the Korean subjects and objects can be left out, which is where we get the no pronouns. So no pronouns were thought to only show up in languages with verb agreement, but looking at Korean and some other Asian languages like Chinese, we know that this is not correct because Korean and Chinese both don't have verbal agreement, and we are finding no pronouns there. So both honorifics and contextually rich environments are two things that I think play a big role into whether a pronoun can be null or can't be omitted. So Korean has an honorific system that uses specific terms and markers to honor both the listener and or the subject and object. This is done by making little additions to the end of the word. Those are called suffixes, or by creating a whole new word. So some examples of that are 님, which is added to names and is like saying Mr. And then an example of a separate word would be 댁, which is like another way of saying home. And honorifics are used when talking to someone who is older than the speaker or of higher status. And status can be determined in a lot of different ways that I don't completely understand yet, but a few examples would be earlier, like being a year ahead of someone in school, or a higher position in work, or customer and worker dynamic, or just an age difference. In the beginning of the video, I mentioned asking a person if they're hungry just by saying hungry. And this would be an example of the contextually rich environment where you're using either past information or details you're just able to pick up from around you that makes it possible to understand the conversation, even if some of it is missing, like the you in you are hungry, are you hungry? And then there's also some evidence that mismatching this on purpose can be used to create jokes or sarcasm, like if you were to say your highness to someone when they're not a king or queen, and you're just saying it because they're being entitled to something. This would be you showing too much respect on purpose to make a joke. So now we're going to get into some examples showing that both the honorifics and the contextually rich environment are important to understand why null pronouns can be omitted. And then in this example, we see the underlined pronoun, which is going to be the same for all of the figures, was omitted. And then in this, we have to think of cultural abnormalities. So in South Korea, people just walking around on the street won't talk to a stranger. So when the speaker is using the honorific form, the listener could still ask for confirmation that the speaker is, talking to them, which isn't due to confusion from the fact that there's no pronoun. Because even if it wasn't omitted, the listener would probably still ask for confirmation, which might be proof of honorifics being a factor in the null pronouns, because the listener will know that the speaker is directing the phrase at a stranger, as the polite form would, show. And then the confusion would only arise from the situation being abnormal in their culture. So in this example, we see that one person has dropped the camera, and the listener of this statement would assume when the person said, "drop the camera," that the speaker is the one to have dropped the camera, because the assumed person for this context would obviously be the person who is talking. We see whenever possible in Korean, the speakers are going to drop the pronoun because the listeners will assume the most likely pronoun. And if it were true that the speaker had not broken the camera and it was a friend or a stranger who dropped the camera, the speaker would have used the title or name of the dropper. This is also true for figure 7. So this is using both polite terms and polite suffixes. And the listeners are easily able to understand the intended subject because this statement wouldn't be used for friends or like younger family members. So we can assume that the intended listeners are people who don't know the speaker well or are of higher status. So looking at this figure, we see it's let meet at the entrance of the mall after school, with us being the omitted pronoun. And so we can tell if the speaker is intending to invite all of the members of the group, the pronoun wouldn't be necessary. A pronoun would only be necessary here if the speaker was previously speaking to a smaller part of the group, and then, would have to make it obvious that they're now changing who they're talking to and referring to all of the members in the group. So my conclusion for this is that it doesn't seem like we can just fall back onto either honorifics or the contextually rich environments, that we really do have to put them together in order to understand, and that honorifics just by themselves can cause confusion if too many people are around the same rank or status, which is why with the addition of all of the background information and details around you, it will lower the chances of confusion in speech.